Have you ever been in a relationship where someone tells you they love you, yet something inside you still feels empty? You question their words, you doubt their affection, and deep down you carry a quiet ache that whispers, maybe I'm just not truly lovable. But what if that feeling didn't begin in this relationship at all? What if the real reason you feel unloved today was planted long before you ever fell in love? Long before you even understood what love was? Because the truth is, sometimes the pain we feel in adult relationships is not about the person in front of us. It's about a wound that began in childhood, a wound that quietly shapes how we give love, receive love, and even how we choose the people we love. Many people walk through relationships carrying a silent confusion. They say, my partner cares about me, so why do I still feel so alone? On the surface, everything might look normal. There are messages of affection, maybe even commitment. But inside, there is a constant tension, a feeling that love might disappear at any moment, or that somehow you are too much or not enough. And when that feeling appears, most people blame themselves. They think they are too sensitive, too needy, too insecure, but that is rarely the real story. Human beings are not born doubting love. A child does not come into the world questioning their worth. A child comes into the world expecting connection, expecting warmth, expecting to be seen. For a child, love is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity, just like air or food. When that love is consistent, safe, and emotionally present, something beautiful happens inside the developing brain. The child grows up with a quiet certainty, I matter. I am worthy of love. But when that connection is interrupted, not necessarily through cruelty, but through emotional absence, stress, or misunderstanding, the child begins to adapt. Children are incredibly intelligent in how they survive emotional pain. If a parent is distant, overwhelmed, or unable to respond emotionally, the child does not conclude, my parent is struggling. The child concludes something much more painful, something must be wrong with me. That belief does not disappear as the child grows older. It simply becomes invisible, and then one day that child becomes an adult and falls in love. But here is the problem. When you carry an unconscious belief that you are not truly lovable, love itself can feel threatening. Even when someone genuinely cares for you, your nervous system may not recognize it as safety. Instead, it feels unfamiliar. You begin to question their intentions. You analyze their tone. You notice every small change in behavior. Your mind starts searching for proof that the love might disappear. Not because you want to sabotage the relationship, but because your body learned long ago that connection can be uncertain. In many cases, people who feel unloved in relationships are not lacking love around them. They are struggling to receive it. Love offered from the outside cannot easily reach a heart that learned to protect itself from disappointment. So people often repeat painful patterns. Some chase partners who are emotionally unavailable because that dynamic feels strangely familiar. Others stay in relationships where they constantly try to prove their worth, giving more, sacrificing more, hoping that eventually someone will love them enough to fill that old emptiness. But no partner can heal a wound that was never acknowledged. The healing begins when you stop asking, why don't people love me enough? And start asking a different question. Where did I first learn that love might not be safe? Because the moment you understand the origin of the wound, something powerful happens. You stop blaming yourself. You realize that the feeling of being unloved was never proof of your worthlessness. It was simply the echo of an early experience. And when you begin to meet that younger part of yourself with compassion, when you allow yourself to feel the grief that was once buried, your relationship with love slowly begins to change. You become less desperate for reassurance, less afraid of abandonment, less willing to accept relationships that repeat the same pain. And gradually something new emerges, not the frantic search for love, but the quiet ability to receive it. Because real healing in relationships does not happen when someone finally proves your worth. It happens when you begin to believe it yourself. Let me tell you 5 main reasons why you feel unloved in relationships. Very first is, emotional needs were not fully met in childhood. One of the deepest and most invisible reasons people feel unloved in their relationships begins long before their first heartbreak, long before their first partner, and even long before they understood what love meant. It begins in childhood, in the quiet emotional space between a child and the people they depend on the most. When we think about childhood pain, many people imagine obvious suffering, abuse, abandonment, or harsh treatment. But the truth is that emotional wounds often form in much quieter ways. They grow in the absence of something essential: emotional presence. A child does not simply need food, shelter, or education. A child needs to feel emotionally seen. They need someone who notices their feelings, who responds to their distress, who reflects back to them that their inner world matters. When a child cries, they are not just asking for comfort. They are asking a deeper question: do my feelings matter to someone? When a child shares excitement, they are not just showing joy. They are asking, is my happiness important to you? And when that emotional response is missing, perhaps because parents are stressed, overwhelmed, struggling with their own wounds, or simply unaware of the child's emotional needs, the child adapts in the only way they can. Children are not capable of understanding the complexities of adult struggles. They cannot say, my parent is exhausted from work, or my caregiver is carrying unresolved trauma. Instead, the child reaches a much more personal conclusion. They begin to feel that their emotions are too much or not important enough. Maybe the child learns that expressing sadness leads to dismissal. Maybe anger is punished. Maybe vulnerability is met with silence. So the child begins to do something remarkable and heartbreaking at the same time. They start hiding parts of themselves in order to maintain connection. They become quieter, more agreeable, more self-sufficient. Or sometimes they become the opposite, seeking attention more intensely, trying harder and harder to be noticed. But underneath all these adaptations is the same silent message forming in the child's mind. If my real feelings are not welcomed, then something about me must be wrong. That belief settles deep within the nervous system, often long before language can fully explain it. It becomes a kind of emotional blueprint. And years later, when that child becomes an adult and enters a romantic relationship, that old blueprint quietly begins to operate. Even when a partner offers care, affection, or reassurance, something inside may remain guarded. The love is there, but it does not fully land. It does not fully sink in, because the nervous system remembers a different experience. It remembers what it felt like when emotional needs were overlooked, misunderstood, or minimized. So instead of resting in love, the person may constantly scan for signs that it could disappear. A delayed message suddenly feels threatening. A distracted tone feels like rejection. A moment of distance feels like abandonment. To the outside world, these reactions may seem exaggerated, but inside the person experiencing them, the feeling is deeply real. It is not simply about the present moment. It is about a much older emotional memory that was never fully processed. This is why people sometimes say, I don't know why I feel this way. My partner is good to me, but something still feels missing. What feels missing is not always the partner's love. Sometimes it is the emotional safety that was never fully experienced in the beginning of life. The child who once felt unseen still lives quietly inside the adult. That part of us continues to long for the reassurance that our feelings are valid, that our presence matters, that we are not too much and not too little. And when those early needs were not fully met, love in adulthood can feel confusing. It can feel fragile. It can feel like something that must constantly be earned. But understanding this truth is not about blaming parents or revisiting the past with resentment. Most caregivers were doing the best that they could with the awareness and resources they had. And the purpose of recognizing this pattern is something much more compassionate. It is about realizing that the feeling of being unloved is not proof of your inadequacy. It is often the echo of a time when your emotional world simply needed more attention than it received. And when you begin to see that clearly, something important shifts. Instead of criticizing yourself for being too sensitive or too needy, you begin to recognize the deeper story behind those feelings. You begin to meet your own emotional needs with the understanding that may have been missing before. And slowly, the old belief that love must be fought for, proven, or feared starts to soften. Because the truth is that the child who once wondered if they were lovable was never the problem. The problem was that their emotional needs were never fully heard. And then second is, you learn to doubt your own worth. When a child grows up in an environment where their emotional needs are not consistently acknowledged, Something very subtle but very powerful begins to take shape inside them. It is not a decision they consciously make. It is not a belief someone explicitly teaches them. It is something they quietly conclude about themselves. Children are wired to depend on their caregivers not only for survival, but for emotional reflection. Through the eyes, tone, and presence of the adults around them, a child learns who they are. They learn whether their feelings make sense, whether their needs are valid, and whether they are worthy of care. When a child reaches out with sadness and no one truly responds, the child does not think, "Perhaps my parent is overwhelmed." When their joy is ignored, they do not think, "Maybe the adults around me are too stressed to notice." A child's mind is not capable of those explanations. Instead, the child naturally assumes that the problem lies within themselves. If their emotions seem to irritate the adults around them, they begin to feel that their emotions are wrong. If their needs are dismissed, they begin to feel that their needs are too much. If their presence is overlooked, they begin to feel that they are not important. This is how doubt about one's own worth slowly forms. It does not arrive as a loud statement. It settles quietly into the child's inner world as a vague but persistent feeling. Maybe something about me isn't good enough. Over time, the child adapts in order to protect the connection they desperately need, because for a child, losing connection with caregivers is far more threatening than losing connection with their authentic self. So they begin to reshape themselves. Some children try to become perfect. They learn to perform well, to please, to achieve, hoping that if they are good enough, they will finally receive the love and recognition they crave. Others learn to suppress their needs entirely. They become independent too early, convincing themselves that they do not need anyone. They grow used to carrying their pain quietly. And some continue searching endlessly for reassurance, constantly asking, through words, actions, or behavior, "Am I lovable now?" But underneath all of these strategies lies the same hidden wound, a deep uncertainty about one's inherent value. As the child grows older, this uncertainty does not disappear. It simply becomes part of their emotional foundation. Later in life, when they enter relationships, this early belief begins to influence how they experience love. Even when someone genuinely cares for them, the old doubt whispers in the background. If a partner becomes distant for a moment, it feels like confirmation of their deepest fear. If a conflict arises, it feels like proof that they are somehow inadequate. If love is offered freely, it may even feel uncomfortable, because it challenges a belief they've carried for years. Many people who struggle with feeling unloved are not lacking love around them. What they are struggling with is an internal story that formed long ago, a story that quietly says, "If people really knew me, they might not stay." This belief can shape many choices in relationships. Sometimes people settle for partners who give them only partial love, because that feels consistent with how they see themselves. Sometimes they overextend themselves, constantly trying to earn affection through sacrifice or approval. And sometimes they push love away altogether because the fear of being rejected feels too overwhelming. Yet the most important truth to understand is that this belief about being unlovable was never an accurate reflection of reality. It was an interpretation created by a young mind trying to make sense of emotional disconnection. The child who once doubted their worth was simply responding to an environment where their emotional needs were not fully understood. Recognizing this can be deeply liberating. It allows a person to begin separating who they truly are from the conclusions they once drew about themselves. The doubt that formed in childhood may still echo in adult relationships, but it is not the final truth about a person's value. Because worth is not something a child had to earn then, and it is not something an adult has to prove now. It was always there, even during the moments when no one reflected it back. Thirdly, love became associated with uncertainty. When a child experiences love as something steady and predictable, their nervous system begins to relax into connection. They learn, often without words, that closeness is safe. When someone cares about them, it feels natural. Their body does not tense. Their mind does not search for danger. Love simply feels like a place where they can rest. But not every child grows up with that experience. For many children, affection is present at times and absent at others. There may be moments of warmth, laughter, and attention, followed by long stretches of emotional distance. unpredictability, or tension. The parent may be loving one day and withdrawn the next. They may show tenderness when life is calm, but become unavailable when stress enters the room. From the outside, it might still look like love exists in that home, and in many cases it does. But for the child, the experience of love becomes confusing, because what the child actually feels is inconsistency. One moment they feel close and secure. The next moment they feel ignored or emotionally alone. They do not know when connection will appear or when it will disappear. A child's nervous system is incredibly sensitive to these patterns. It begins learning not just whether love exists, but how reliable it is. If love is predictable, the child relaxes into it. But if love comes and goes without warning, the child's nervous system starts preparing for instability. Instead of associating love with safety, the body begins to associate love with uncertainty. The child may become hyper, aware of subtle emotional shifts around them. They learn to watch facial expressions, tone of voice, and body language carefully. They try to anticipate when affection might return or when it might suddenly vanish. Over time, this constant monitoring becomes exhausting, but it also becomes familiar, and familiarity has a powerful influence on our adult relationships. Years later, when that child grows into an adult and falls in love, their nervous system does not automatically recognize stable love as comfortable. In fact, steady affection can sometimes feel unfamiliar, even suspicious. Part of them may wait for the moment when the love will disappear. They might notice small changes in their partner's mood and feel immediate anxiety. A delayed reply to a message may feel like rejection. A quiet evening may feel like emotional distance. These reactions are often misunderstood, even by the person experiencing them. They may wonder why their mind jumps so quickly to fear when nothing dramatic has actually happened. But the nervous system is not responding only to the present moment. It is responding to an old emotional pattern that was learned long ago. For someone who grew up with inconsistent affection, love may feel unpredictable. It may feel like something that can appear suddenly, but disappear just as quickly. And when love feels unstable, the body naturally stays alert. Instead of relaxing into connection, the person may remain guarded. Instead of trusting affection, they may feel compelled to test it, question it, or constantly seek reassurance that it is still there. Sometimes this creates a painful cycle. The more uncertain they feel, the more reassurance they seek. And the more reassurance they need, the more pressure the relationship may begin to carry. But underneath these behaviors is not manipulation or weakness. It is a nervous system that learned early in life that love could not always be counted on. The child who once waited for emotional connection never fully learned what it felt like to trust that love would remain. Understanding this pattern can bring a profound sense of compassion toward oneself. It reveals that the anxiety many people feel in relationships is not a personal failure or a character flaw. It is the echo of an earlier experience where love was present, but not always dependable. And the healing begins when we gently teach the nervous system something new. That love does not always have to arrive with uncertainty. That closeness does not always have to carry the fear of disappearance. That it is possible, slowly and patiently, to experience connection not as a source of anxiety, but as a place of genuine safety. Another important thing is that you are drawn to familiar emotional patterns. There is a quiet mystery in human relationships that many people struggle to understand. Again and again, people find themselves attracted to partners who bring them the same kind of emotional pain they have already known. They may promise themselves that this time will be different, that this relationship will finally feel safe and fulfilling. Yet somehow the story repeats itself. They fall for someone who feels distant, someone who cannot fully commit, someone who offers affection in small, unpredictable moments, but never in the steady way the heart truly longs for. And after enough of these experiences, people begin asking a painful question: why do I keep choosing the wrong people? But the truth is often deeper than simply choosing the wrong partner. Human beings are not only drawn to what feels good, we are also drawn to what feels familiar. The nervous system, shaped by early experiences, learns certain emotional patterns and begins to recognize them as normal, even when they are painful. In childhood, our first experiences of connection create an emotional blueprint. Through those early relationships, we unconsciously learn what closeness feels like, how love is expressed, and what we must do in order to maintain it. If love in childhood was calm, attentive, and emotionally present, the child grows up expecting relationships to feel safe and mutual. But if love was distant, inconsistent, or emotionally confusing, the child learns something very different. They may learn that love requires effort, patience, or self-sacrifice. They may learn that closeness comes with emotional tension or uncertainty. These lessons are not stored as clear thoughts in the mind. They are stored in the nervous system as a deep sense of familiarity. Years later, when we meet potential partners, something within us responds not just to who the person is, but to how their emotional presence feels. Sometimes the person who treats us kindly and consistently may feel strangely unexciting. Their stability can feel unfamiliar, almost unsettling. There is no emotional chase, no sense of needing to prove oneself. At the same time, someone who carries emotional distance or unpredictability may create a powerful sense of attraction. Something about them feels intensely alive, even if it also feels slightly painful. What many people interpret as chemistry is sometimes the nervous system recognizing an old emotional pattern. The heart is not simply looking for love. It is looking for something that resembles the emotional landscape it already knows. This is why people often find themselves repeating similar relationship dynamics without fully understanding why. A person who once tried very hard to gain the attention of a distant parent may later find themselves trying to win the love of a distant partner. The emotional script remains the same. If I try harder, if I give more, if I am patient enough, maybe this time I will finally receive the love that once felt just out of reach. In many ways, these relationship patterns represent an unconscious attempt to resolve old emotional wounds. The psyche hopes that by recreating a similar situation, this time the ending might change. Perhaps this time the distant person will stay. Perhaps this time the love will become steady. Perhaps this time the child's old longing will finally be fulfilled. But because the pattern itself remains unconscious, people often enter these relationships without realizing they are stepping into a familiar emotional role. And when the same disappointment appears again, they may blame themselves or believe that they are simply unlucky in love. Yet what is really happening is far more human and far more understandable. The nervous system is following a path it learned early in life. It is moving toward what it recognizes, not necessarily toward what will truly nurture it. Recognizing this pattern can be both painful and liberating. Painful because it reveals how deeply our early experiences shape our choices. Liberating because once we see the pattern clearly, we are no longer completely controlled by it. Awareness creates space. When someone begins to understand that attraction can sometimes be tied to familiarity rather than genuine emotional safety, they can pause before repeating the same story again. They can begin asking new questions. Does this relationship feel calm or chaotic? Am I trying to earn love? Or am I simply receiving it? Does this connection nurture me? Or does it recreate an old emotional struggle? These questions mark the beginning of a new relationship with oneself. Because the goal is not to eliminate attraction or deny emotion. The goal is to recognize that true love often feels different from the emotional patterns we first learn. It may feel quieter, more stable, less dramatic. But within that quiet stability lies something the nervous system may not have known before. A love that does not require you to fight for it. A love that does not depend on proving your worth. A love that simply remains. And in the last talk, difficulty receiving love. One of the most painful and confusing experiences in relationships is the feeling of being loved, yet somehow unable to truly feel it. A partner may show care, offer affection, and even express commitment, but inside there remains a quiet resistance, a subtle distance, a feeling that the love is not entirely real or not entirely safe. From the outside, this can be difficult to understand. People may say it, but your partner clearly loves you, and on a rational level, you might even agree with them. Yet emotionally, something inside does not fully relax into that love. This is not because you are incapable of love, nor because you are ungrateful for it. More often, it is because the heart has learned through earlier experiences that receiving love can come with risk. When a child grows up in an environment where emotional connection is inconsistent, dismissive, or confusing, the child's mind and nervous system begin to develop protective strategies. These strategies are not flaws. They are intelligent adaptations designed to shield the child from repeated emotional pain. If a child once reached out for comfort and was met with indifference, the next time they may hesitate before reaching out again. If vulnerability led to disappointment, the child may slowly learn to keep certain feelings hidden. Over time, the child becomes skilled at protecting themselves. They learn not to rely too heavily on others. They learn to manage emotions privately. They learn that expecting too much closeness might lead to hurt. These protective responses are deeply embedded in the nervous system. They operate quietly and automatically, often without conscious awareness. Years later, when that child grows into an adult and enters a loving relationship, those same defenses may still be active. Even when a partner offers genuine affection, the body may remain cautious. Part of the person longs for closeness, but another part remains guarded. When someone says, "I love you," instead of feeling comfort, a small voice inside may whisper, "What if they stop loving me?" When a partner shows consistent care, the mind may search for hidden meanings or potential signs that the love might disappear. This does not happen because the person wants to reject love. It happens because trusting love requires vulnerability, and vulnerability once carried emotional danger for someone whose early experiences taught them that love could be unpredictable or unreliable. Fully opening to it can feel almost frightening. Accepting love means lowering the emotional armor that once kept them safe, and letting go of that armor can feel risky, even when the present relationship is healthy. Sometimes this difficulty receiving love shows up in subtle ways. A person may downplay compliments or feel uncomfortable when someone expresses admiration. They might respond with humor, deflection, or self-criticism instead of simply accepting the appreciation. At other times, the defense appears through constant doubt. Even when love is demonstrated through actions, the person may still question its sincerity. They may ask themselves, "Do they really mean it?" Or, "What if they discover who I truly am and change their mind?" These doubts are not random. They are rooted in earlier experiences where emotional security was uncertain. The nervous system learned that depending on love could lead to disappointment. So even when love arrives, it keeps a cautious distance. Yet this protective distance can create a quiet paradox. The very defenses that once protected the heart can also prevent it from experiencing the love it longs for. Love may be present, but it cannot fully enter a space that remains guarded. Understanding this pattern requires compassion rather than judgment. These defenses were not created out of weakness. They were created out of survival. At one point in life, they served an important purpose, but as we grow and form new relationships, we slowly have the opportunity to teach the nervous system something different. Through consistent care, emotional safety, and self-awareness, the heart can begin to relax its defenses. Trust does not appear instantly. It grows gradually through repeated experiences where love proves itself to be steady rather than fragile. And as that trust grows, something remarkable begins to happen. The love that once felt distant or uncertain starts to feel more real, not because the partner changed, but because the heart is finally learning that it is safe to receive what it once feared might disappear. And when you begin to see these patterns clearly, something important changes inside you. You stop asking the painful question, "Why am I so hard to love?" And you begin asking a far more truthful one, "What happened to the part of me that once believed I wasn't lovable?" Because the feeling of being unloved is rarely proof that love is missing from your life. More often, it is the echo of an older story, a story written in moments when your heart needed understanding, reassurance, and emotional presence that may not have fully arrived. But here is the quiet truth that many people spend years discovering. Your worth was never defined by those early moments. Your lovability was never determined by how well others understood your needs. The child who once felt unseen was never the problem. And healing does not begin when someone else finally proves your worth. It begins when you gently start seeing yourself with the same compassion you once hoped to receive. When you begin to recognize your feelings instead of dismissing them. When you allow yourself to acknowledge the old pain instead of hiding from it. When you stop trying to earn love and begin believing that you are worthy of it. Because real love does not ask you to become someone else. It does not demand that you silence your emotions or shrink your needs. Real love meets you where you are And when you begin to understand the origins of your wounds, something powerful happens. The patterns that once controlled your relationships slowly lose their hold. You stop chasing love that feels uncertain. You stop settling for affection that leaves you questioning your worth. Instead, you begin to move towards something quieter, steadier, and far more healing. A love that does not feel like a struggle. A love that does not make you doubt yourself. A love that finally feels safe enough for your heart to rest. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this journey is realizing that the love you were searching for was never meant to prove your value. It was meant to meet the value that was always there.